tutorial over 4-7 transformations of quadratic graphs. Your new vocabulary is vertex form. And for a quadratic, that's y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k, where h and k are your vertex. Also, a couple things to know about this. X equals h is your axis of symmetry. And these are quick shortcuts. And A determines the shape and direction of the parabola. So again, A determines the shape and direction of the parabola. So for example 1, we're going to write y equals x squared minus 2x plus 4 in vertex form. In order to write this in vertex form, we must complete the square. Well, the problem is that this is not a perfect square, so we have to make it into one. So the way we're going to set it up is y equals parentheses x squared minus 2x plus blank, close parentheses, plus 4 minus blank. Alright, so whatever we put in these blanks are going to be the exact same thing. Now, in order to figure out what needs to go in those blanks, we're going to take this middle number that's attached to my x value. We're going to take that and divide it by 2. And that gives me -1. And then we're going to take that and square the result. So -1 squared is 1. So that means I'm going to plug in a 1 into this blank and a 1 into this blank as well. Now I can factor my parentheses. This is going to factor into x minus 1 squared, and I got that -1 from this first step here. That's what you're going to plug in. And then we're going to take 4 minus 1, which is 3. So plus 3. So this equation in vertex form is y equals x minus 1 squared plus 3. Next example. It says write y equals -3x squared minus 18x plus 10 in vertex form, then analyze the function. Alright, so I'm going to take this function, and for the first two terms, I'm going to factor out a -3 because I don't want to deal with that 3 on the x squared term. So if I factor out a -3, I'm left with x squared plus 6x, and I'm going to put a plus blank here and close my parenthesis because here in a minute I'm going to actually complete the square. And then I'm going to put plus 10 out to the side. And then minus blank. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and complete the square. And the way you do that is you take this middle term, this 6, you're going to divide it by 2, you get 3, and you're going to square the result to get 9. And 9 goes in these blanks. But there's a catch. This -3 on the outside changes the game. If you're going to add a 9, this is actually saying -3 times 9 is what you're adding. So you have to make sure that if you ever have a multiple on the outside of your parentheses and you're completing the square, you also have to multiply it when you're adding it as well. Okay. Now we're going to simplify. Y equals -3, and then this becomes a perfect square. I know what it needs to be by looking at the result here. So x plus 3 squared. And then for the last part, I have 10 minus -3 times 9, which turns into 10 plus 27, so plus 37. So this is your answer. Y equals negative 3, x plus 3 squared plus 37. Example 2. Which is the equation of the function shown in the graph? So what we have to do is we actually have to find the equation of this parabola. Now remember that vertex form is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k, where h and k are the vertex. So if I look at my vertex, I know that it's at 2, negative 3. So that means h is 2, k is negative 3. So when I'm looking at my answer choices, I need a negative 2 because when I plug this h into my formula, it becomes the opposite sign. So negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. Alright, well all of those have a negative 2. The next thing I need to look for, k has to be a negative 3. Well, if we look at a, it's a positive 3, so that can't work. B has a negative 3, so it works. C has a positive 3, so that's not going to work. And D has a negative 3 as well. The next thing I can look at is whether or not it faces up or down. And this parabola opens up, so that means our A value has to be positive. And that doesn't really help me since B and D both have positive values for our A value. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to see what point on here the graph actually goes through. And it looks like the point 0, negative 1 is a pretty point. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to plug it into my vertex form, and A should be the only variable that's left. So I'm going to move to another screen so we can do this. Alright, so we have our vertex form. We know that our vertex is h and k. We found out that it was 2 and negative 3, and then we have to point 0 and negative 1 because we see that it's on the graph. This represents x and y, and that's what I'm going to plug into my equation. So, according to my points, y is negative 1. So negative 1 equals a, we don't know what that is, parentheses, x is 0, minus 2 squared minus 3. Now we need to solve for a. We do our parentheses and exponents first, so we get negative 1 is equal to a times negative 2 squared minus 3. Negative 2 squared is 4, so we have negative 1 equals 4a minus 3. To solve for a, we have to add 3 to both sides. We get 2 is equal to 4a, and if we divide by 4 on both sides, we get a is equal to 1/2. So if we go back to our equation, we need our a to be 1/2, so the only one it could be is answer choice B. So that brings us to our transformations of quadratic functions. Here's our vertex form up at the top. If we're talking about h, that's going to be a horizontal translation. Think of that the parentheses as backwards rolled. Remember, if it says -5, that actually means right 5, and if it says -5, that means it's going to, excuse me, if it says +5, that means it's going to move to the left 5. So it's the exact opposite of what you think it might do. K is the vertical translation. It means it goes up or down. A is a reflection. If it's positive, it opens up. If it's a negative, it opens down. And then A is a dilation. You think of it as a vertical stretch. It's either getting taller or shorter. Okay? Example 3. It says graph y equals negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 1. Now, you can plug this directly into your graphing calculator, and it should give you your answer, and you should be able to look at your table and get your points from there. But we're going to go ahead and complete the square so that way you get a little bit more practice. Alright, so remember, we need to factor out this negative 2 first from the first two terms. So I'm going to get negative 2, parentheses, x squared minus 2x plus blank, close parentheses, plus 1 minus blank. And this is how I need to set these up every time. Now if I want to complete the square, I need to take this middle term, negative 2, and divide it by 2 to get negative 1, and square the result to get 1. So I'm going to add a 1 in this blank and a 1 in this blank, and since I have something on the outside of the parentheses, I need to put it over here as well and multiply. So I need to go ahead and factor what's in my parentheses. It now becomes a perfect square. Y equals negative 2 parentheses. It's going to be x, and then this result goes in here. So negative 1 squared. Let's see, we have minus negative 2, which that becomes a positive. So we have 1 plus 2. So our answer is y equals negative 2 x minus 1 squared plus 3. Now, you can go ahead and graph this in your graphing calculator, and you should get the result that looks like this. Thanks for watching.